Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Well, hello again. I'm Angela Taylor, your host for Unlocking the Club. And I just want to thank you for joining us in this Unlocking the Club space. This is a space where our guests and I discuss what we're up to in our lives, both personally and professionally. And more importantly, we have a really candid conversation about who we have actually had to be throughout our journeys. Not just what we've done in our journey, but who we've had to be as Black women to be able to survive, and not just survive, but to hopefully thrive throughout that journey. The core of what we do on the Unlocking the Club podcast is literally to unlock our truths in a way that is both cathartic and impactful. And my hope is that my guest today, you are amazing listeners, and I learn a little bit about ourselves through the stories that we share during this upcoming conversation. Listening to your inner voice and changing directions as you start to hear or connect with the stories that are shared. Well, I think today we have the perfect guest to really discuss something important in the Black community, but specifically for Black women when we think about our health and well-being. So I'm really excited to unlock this important topic with you with today's special guest, Nia Mostacero. Nia Mostacero is a retired E8 in the U.S. Air Force, where she achieved 7 degrees and certifications and is a diverse volunteer and advocate for dementia awareness, faith-based organizations, and our nation's veterans. Nia is also the 2024 Miss Meridian Idaho and is competing for Miss Idaho as we speak. Thanks for tuning in as we unlock the club with our special guest today, Nia Mostacero. Nia, welcome to Unlocking the Club. It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you too, Angela.
Thanks for joining us. I think this is a really important topic. We talk about unlocking the club, and there's a lot of clubs that sometimes as Black women we are part of that we don't share all the details about what it's like to be in that club. And I think, fortunately for the rest of us, you were part of an exclusive club. Unfortunately, it's a club that not many are familiar with. So I would love for you, we're going to dig in deep right away on Unlocking the Club. I would love for you to share a club that you are currently a part of that you feel needs to be unlocked so that our sisters around the globe can understand what may be possible in their own journey.
Wonderful. So, as you said, fortunately and unfortunately, I am a part of a club, and the club is early onset dementia. About 4 months after I retired from the Air Force in 2017, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. A couple of years after that, my diagnosis did change to chronic traumatic encephalopathy due to traumatic brain injuries. And it's very rare that, well, it's not rare, but it is because the numbers are growing as people are more aware of their symptoms and are taking charge and advocating for their health, as I had to. The studies are showing that people are showing signs in their 40s, decades before you would think of someone in late stages dementia.
Yeah, it's incredible. You think about, and I know this was true for me until I heard your story. And you think about your grandparents, right? If you're in your 20s or 30s, you think about your parents if you're in your 30s or 40s, somebody who's at retirement age or beyond. That is the profile that we see on all of the advertising, just in our own lives, of someone who may have Alzheimer's or dementia. We certainly don't see a beautiful young 40-year-old Black woman who's coming off such a storied career in the Air Force. When you first received that diagnosis, first I want to kind of peel back the curtain. Like, when you were experiencing symptoms, did you recognize that this could be Alzheimer's or dementia? Or what was that journey like to get to the actual outcome that you did, that this is actually what you had?
I absolutely did not
Mm,
think dementia. I thought that I had a brain tumor, to tell
mm,
you the truth. I was sure that my brain scans were going to reveal a brain tumor because I've been so off. Some of my symptoms were I had started hallucinating at night, and outside I would see birds coming at my head or spiders on my arms. I would hear or see voices in my, I would hear voices or see shadow people in my bedroom at night.
wow.
My biggest challenges were at work because I've always been, like you mentioned, I have 7 degrees and certifications. I'd always been a very studious person. I loved learning, a lifelong learner, but there was one certification that I was working towards to be a Christian counselor. I was actually failing those courses. And I had been valedictorian, I had been class speaker in
Mm,
college at graduation. So it wasn't adding up. And I had put so many processes in place to help my memory at work, but I was still making mistakes on paperwork. I was still showing up to meetings and with mood swings. I was off. I was
wow.
very off and having sleep disturbances as well. So I went to my primary care manager, which happened to be a male, a white male, and he told me that I was stressed. And then he told me I was depressed.
Mm,
So they sent me to mental health doctor, and I was placed on various antidepressants,
wow.
which did not work. I was still having the problems. So I took charge of my medical care and advocated for myself. And I changed primary care managers to a female who happened to be Taiwanese. And she was so thorough. Angela, the woman sent me to about 5 or 6 specialists
Mm,
to make sure that we ruled out any possible things, because the one thing that people don't want to do is automatically jump to dementia when you're having memory problems, because you could have, from my travels I've learned you could have iron deficiencies, you could have diabetes, you could be celiac, you could be gluten sensitive, which would also give you brain fog and things like that. So you don't want to just jump to memory conditions, but you want to explore all of the possibilities. You want to rule out everything. And that's what happened in my case. Unfortunately for me, my neuropsych and neurology examinations revealed that I had cognitive decline, and my PET scan revealed that I had atrophied parts of my brain.
wow.
So that was unfortunate for me, but I really believe that we have to take our medical care into our own hands and advocate for ourselves when we're
Mm.
not getting the full treatment that we deserve.
What I want is to spend some time on that, advocating for yourself, and just what the process and the journey was like when you started finding out like you just weren't feeling the right way. But when you received that diagnosis that identified that it is young onset dementia, I felt it even when you were just describing it there was a little bit of a hesitation and a pause. When you received that diagnosis, how did you feel?
Honestly, I it didn't click because I remember vividly when I was in my neurologist office, he looked sadder than I did.
Mm,
His whole body, his whole demeanor changed when he pulled up my records and my brain scans, because he had this wonderful thing where he went over the parts. He said, this part of your brain is atrophied, this part is damaged, that part is damaged, this part controls your memory, this part controls your executive function, you have damage in those areas, and that is why you are experiencing those symptoms. And he told me, he said, I only have a handful of patients in their 40s. And he said, he told me 3 things. He said, get your affairs in order, watch the movie Still Alice,
mm.
and contact the Alzheimer's Association. But I thought it didn't really click because I was thinking dementia was for old people.
Yes.
So I didn't understand his sadness until he told me, I'm going to give you, probably based off of your scans, about 5 to 8 good years.
Wow, that's a heavy load to for someone just to give you right there when you're not expecting something like that. What was going through your mind as you're trying to make sense of his sadness and you're trying to reconcile what does this actually mean in my life?
I remember asking him, could it be a brain tumor? Because you can just take the tumor out
Mm.
and then I will go back to being normal. And he said, no. He said, no. And I said, could it be anything else? And he said, no. So then that put me on the road to major depression for about a year, actually. I sunk into a depression. I did all the things that he asked me to do, but I felt like my life was over because I wasn't myself. I wasn't that hard charging senior master sergeant that got all the things done, that got all her degrees and was mentoring and multitasking like crazy. I couldn't do those things. I couldn't perform anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, and depression can take on so many different forms for us, right? Depending on what the circumstances are. And you think about that, you could be, in essence, mourning who you've been and mourning or uncertain of what was to come. Because again, when we think about Alzheimer's or dementia, we think of someone late in their life that has lived a full life. And so, as you were going through this state of depression, what helped pull you through?
You were absolutely accurate. Stages of grief.
Mm.
I went through the stages of grief. I mourned my future because I had big plans. I was going to be the CEO of a nonprofit. I was going to start my own nonprofit that dealt with child abuse and rescuing children. And I was going to do prison ministry.
Wow.
So now what was I going to do? But one thing that took me through was my faith. For a short while, I was asking God, why? Why me? But when I got off of that and he answered, why not you? I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you. Just watch. So I said, okay. I was obedient. I started going back to church. I got baptized again. I contacted the Alzheimer's Association, where I became a national early stage advisor for the Alzheimer's Association. I did amazing work, and I'm still doing a lot of advocacy.
Mm. Well, kudos to you for turning that around and saying that you still the things that you wanted to do, you wanted to have an impact after your career in the military. And thank you so much for your service. After that career, you had all these aspirations, and it's ironic. We always say that he doesn't give us anything we can't handle. And the things that you wanted to do, whether it was prison ministry or being a CEO of a nonprofit, it feels like through this platform that you now have, where you are able to be very vulnerable and candid and honest about your lived experience, where I imagine some people may not believe it because we are so ignorant to the existence of early onset or young onset dementia. Is that I just am curious of like how that vision coming to life, how powerful that has been for you.
It's been ebb and flow, but with every ebb, I've gone up, up, up. For instance, and when I was first diagnosed, the VA, I had a neurologist tell me, no, your scans are a fluke. You're too young to have dementia. You're not demented enough. So
Wow.
we can't care for you. That's what I was told. So I sought out other resources. It has taught me to be resourceful, to advocate for myself, and communicate so that people understand. Because a lot of the disbelief is from ignorance.
Yeah.
But if you really think about anything, there are stages. If you can think about it from an intellectual standpoint, obviously there are early stages before late stages.
Right. Right. Well, and you talk about advocating for yourself, but before you can get to the point where you're advocating for yourself and you're experiencing these dramatic symptoms, I think there's many people in our communities who ignore those symptoms for a variety of reasons. Maybe because you're not sure if it's a big deal. You want to make a big deal of it and you got to show up for work, you got to show up for your family. You may ignore it because on the other side, there could be bad news and you'd rather not have bad news. But so when you were experiencing these rare symptoms, and not necessarily getting any great feedback, what compelled you to say, nah, something is not right?
For me, I'm blessed in that my background was as a medic.
Okay.
So I understood the medical system that I was being cared for in the military medical system. So I understood the language. I understood this doesn't feel right. I know what you should be doing and how you should be caring for me. And then I was a first sergeant. So I had to be strong. And that's where
Mhm.
the advocating for yourself comes into play, because I always had to advocate for my people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was my turn to advocate for myself.
Yeah. And what does that look like? What does advocating for yourself look like? If you're talking to a young woman or a colleague about why it's important, what does that look like?
For me, it looks like something just as simple as taking notes and asking questions, not being timid. Even if you are timid in a doctor's appointment, use your patient portal and ask questions that way. If you're afraid to ask face to face, use technology. It means taking someone with you if you're feeling timid. There's, for me, I utilize all of those things to help me, because with cognitive challenges, I don't, every day is different. I may feel strong one day and weak the next
Yeah.
mentally. So I utilize all the things to advocate for myself.
Well, it's extremely important, like all those things that you just talked about. And I think about for Black women specifically, because sometimes we're not seen and heard or believed, is we hesitate to show up powerfully and to advocate for ourselves. And it's so important for us to prioritize our own health, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't take care of the village that we are responsible for, or that we feel like we have to take care of. And I think back to my mother, who, as she was going through some healthcare situations, she talked about, and I had never heard this before, but every time we would be heading to an appointment, there's a little bit of anxiety that I just felt in the air. And one day she finally said that she had white coat syndrome. And how she explained that was like just going to a hospital, sitting in front of a doctor, having him or her just probe or ask you questions or question you was anxiety inducing. And I feel that for so many of us in our community, the experience that we have in healthcare prevents us and precludes us from actually prioritizing our health and putting ourselves in those uncomfortable situations, but knowing that we need the information. Was any of that in your journey prior to this diagnosis or afterwards, as you're advocating for others and you're helping other people understand how important it is to prioritize their health? Has that come up for you?
Absolutely. I wouldn't go as far as say I should be diagnosed with the
Mm.
syndrome, but there's definitely a level of anxiety when I see a new doctor and I have to review my history and talk about my symptoms and relive all of the pain that I had years ago. And then just wondering, are they going to believe me? Even though I have the brain scans, even though I have the other doctors, their peers saying I have this, are they going to believe me, or are they going to say, no, you're just depressed?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that whether we're believed or not can prevent us from getting the help or assistance that we need. Because there's nothing that makes you feel less than when you tell the truth, you talk about your lived experience and they don't believe you. And I'll reference, there was a New York Times article a few months ago, Nia, that came out, and it profiled some young Black women who were going through menopause in their 30s.
Wow.
And they talked about the number of times they went to their doctor and were listing symptoms that may not be in alignment with all the symptoms that doctors have, that oftentimes they find because the subjects of a lot of the testing are white women,
That's right.
not Black women. And so these individuals were going and saying, no, like it's all the symptoms I'm feeling, this is not normal. And they weren't believed. They were being misdiagnosed. They were giving different drugs, different treatments that weren't actually impacting what was going on with them. And it's extremely frustrating for me to hear. And that's why I wanted to have you on this show, because I think that when we think about menopause, when we think about dementia, and we think about Black women and healthcare, this is a horrible recipe for a painful experience. And so, what do we need to know when we unlock this club about trying to dispel some of the myths about whether what age you need to be to have these symptoms, or if the symptoms aren't the symptoms that you find when you go to WebMD and do the search?
Basically, just keep in mind that physiologically, biologically, we are all different. Our makeup is going to determine how we experience symptoms, and it will be different for every single person. My walk with CTE is different from my buddy Steven, who is a 62-year-old white male. I have a friend, it's funny you said that about menopause. I have a friend who was told she had menopause, and then she changed providers, and it turned out she had early onset Alzheimer's.
Oh my goodness.
So always understand and know that nobody knows your body more or better than you do. And you have to stick up for that, and you have to stick with that.
Yeah, I think this is a really important part of the club that Nia and I want to unlock today is like you have to advocate for yourself. And so what that requires is that you actually take the time to know yourself, know your body, know what ails you when you're not feeling quite right. I think oftentimes we come up with excuses. We're like, we'll be all right, or maybe I'll just take some Tylenol, or I need to sleep it off. But like, start to chart actually how you're feeling. And if it is a little bit off, don't hesitate to just go in and check with your primary care physician. And I would be remiss to say that I know everyone doesn't have insurance. So it's
Right.
not as easy as going in and doing that. But we need to make sure that we are our own best advocates in those moments. And then find a friend that you can count on who is going to be that person that is not going to let the doctor talk down to you, who's not going to let the doctor like leave the room without actually giving you a full battery of tests. But if you need an army in that room to make sure that they're advocating for you, it's that important. Is that because if you prolong something a month, a year, you may miss the window where you can get the treatment necessary to maybe avoid a long term devastating prognosis.
Absolutely. And you said something that is so important for our community, and it's clinical trials.
Mm,
Participating in clinical trials as Black and Brown people is so important, because when they create these drugs, sometimes they don't work on us because the participants that tested those drugs out were, for the most part, statistically white males, white older males. So biologically, we are different. Physiologically, we are different. So those drugs work differently on our bodies. And so
mm.
we need to take the time to participate in clinical trials as Black and Brown people.
Really important. And I want to kind of this juxtaposition between the excellence, the Black excellence that you experienced in your life, right? At the top of your class, at the top of the US Air Force, the things that you achieved, who you wanted to be. I feel that so many of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? The imposter syndrome that shows up of what you're expected to be able to do. How does that show up for you now when you have agency over yourself in different ways?
Wow, imposter syndrome. That's a bear. I do experience it at times because it's surreal. My journey is surreal. I'm beating all the odds. I'm at year 7,
Mm,
and the neurologist told me I would only have 5 to 8 good years, but I'm thriving. I lead a full life. I'm in a pageant. That's a bucket list item. I'm in a new love affair or relationship. My life is blooming right now, and it seems surreal. Who is given a terminal illness and life gets better?
mm. And it's perspective, right? It's all about the perspective that you have when whatever you're faced with. And again, God wouldn't give you anything that you can't handle, and you certainly have handled this quite well. And as you mentioned, so 2024's Miss Meridian Idaho, in an upcoming window of time. By the time that this airs, you will have competed in the Miss Idaho pageant. Talk to us a little bit about why this journey has been important to you, why it was on your bucket list.
This journey was on my bucket list because I was asked to participate in various modeling runway shows. And someone said, you know what, you should really consider competing because you have a powerful story. And my platform is combating memories matter, combating young onset dementia stigmas. Because of the stigma associated with having a young onset dementia, it doesn't say, you know what, you're kind of cute, I'm going to bypass you. Or
Mhm.
you're too young, I'm going to bypass you. No, dementia knows no bounds. And that is something, that's a message that I really wanted to get out. And I've been able to get in spaces I would have never been invited to, go to places didn't even know existed. It's just been a wonderful journey of educating and inspiring people.
So as you educate and inspire along the way, what's some advice that you would give to young women who may aspire to be in a pageant, who may want to be a senior leader in the military, who may want to be the CEO for a nonprofit? What's some advice that you'd give them?
I would tell them to show up whole, show up fully, and show up your best. For I can honestly say, I'm 49 years old, so I'm kind of old school now, I guess you would say. I grew up in a time in the military and in my life where Black women had to be we had to work harder, be double as smart. We had to put double the effort in to get the same amount of recognition and achievement as our white counter or our Caucasian counterparts. And so that, even with my mother made me work very hard. I couldn't bring home B's. I had to bring home A's. If I brought home a B, then there was problems. I was grounded. So for me, that's been ingrained in me to just excellence in all that we do. Show up with excellence.
Yeah. One of the things that my business partner and I with the Dignitas agency talk about all the time is you hear from the youngest age, put your head down, work hard, get good grades, and get a good job, right? Get an education and get a good job. And so often you know that you are having the tax, the black tax that we talk about all the time, work twice as hard. And one of the things that we say with the Dignitas agency, we tell our clients all the time, if you are working twice as hard, make sure that you're bringing twice as much value. So you're working twice as hard, you're bringing twice as much value, then you need to go to the table and ask for twice as much money.
Absolutely.
Right? So making sure that the work that you're putting in is delivering value, that you can go and make sure that you're demanding that you get compensated for the value that you're bringing.
Absolutely. That's amazing advice. We used to say, you know what? If you want it, closed mouths don't get fed.
Closed mouths do not get fed, not at all. And that's one of the things, the fact that you refuse to close your mouth and not share your story, but instead you took the opposite direction and you were vulnerable, you were honest, you unlocked your truth, you decided to share your story, use your platform. It feels like you feel very regal and powerful as you sit there. And what I also have observed is that you give so much grace to others. Is that it's not just about Nia, but you are the first person to show up in the proverbial digital room on social media and to applaud others, to recommend another small business owner, to promote something that's going on. Where did you get that gift? That's not something that just happens. Like, was that your family, how you were raised? Was it your mother, your grandmother? Like, how did you learn how important that was to be giving and give grace?
That I'm going to pay homage to one of my fellow senior NCOs who's retired. His name was Huey.
Okay,
And
who?
we were stationed in approximately the year 2010 in Minot, North Dakota.
Freezing.
And I was a brand new first sergeant. I walked in with the Commandant Award, the top award from my school. I won that. And he said, you know what, Nia, I'm going to tell you, lead with the grace you've been given.
Mm.
And I've taken that with me my whole entire life after that. I try to lead with the grace I've been given because I've been given a lot of grace.
I love that. I love that. Well, we are here on Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor. We have our special guest, Nia Mostacero, and she is literally leading with the grace that she's been given. That is such a great perspective, insight that Huey shared with you in the cold days in Minot, South Dakota. Um, I would love to dig a little bit deeper, Nia, and help our listeners and viewers get to know you a little bit better away from this particular club, this exclusive club that you've been a part of around early onset dementia. And so I would love to have you here on the backside, on the back nine, to talk a little bit more about who you've been throughout your journey. All right, welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor. And before we let our special guest, Nia Mostacero, go, we'd like to invite her to join us for the back nine, kind of the backside of our conversation, where we get a chance to continue to peel back the curtain a bit during a pseudo speed round. These questions are not so fast. We invite you to go as deep as you want. But Nia, I think the first question is, besides your own home, however, your proverbial home, whatever you consider your home, what is the place that you feel the safest to be yourself?
I feel the safest to be myself with my grandbaby.
Mm,
I have a 2-year-old granddaughter named Olivia, and I was blessed enough to where when I was diagnosed, my son and daughter-in-law decided to go ahead and make me a grandparent because I was early on in the disease. And they wanted to make sure that I knew her. They even let me name her. But when I'm with her, I feel the safest. I feel the most calm, peaceful. I feel the most loved.
mm. There's something about being around the innocent. And when you see this life and their future,
Absolutely.
it's pretty powerful. That's beautiful. I love it. I sense that with all the grace that you have been given and that you give to others, that there's not a lot of situations that you hesitate to show up in. But I would love for you to share, if there is anything, a situation that you walk into with trepidation.
The pageant.
Yeah, something new, right? It's a bucket
That
list, and
it's
it's
a yes, yes, my sister. It's a new challenge. I'm stepping out on faith. I'm asking God to meet me where I fall short because I do have cognitive challenges. There's an interview process where you're interviewed by 5 judges, and they're to give you 2 to 3 questions within a 5-minute period each.
mm,
And they could ask you about anything under the sun. So I have to be ready. And I'm walking into it. It's a bucket list. I put myself into this, but I'm walking into it thinking, oh my gosh, did I bite off more than I can chew?
no, you're ready. You're ready. Because you can just be you. Like, there's no one who's going to have a more powerful story than you have. And so, as you just show up in all your glory, you will be fine for sure. And hopefully, we'll be able to have fun in those moments as well. I get curious as well, as you've revealed a lot about who you are in this journey with early onset or young onset dementia. Tell us a little bit about something about yourself that you refuse to hide, other than that.
I refuse to hide my faith. My faith leads me, it guides me. I have to have a moral compass and a belief in someone or something that is greater, more kind, more loving, and more accepting and compassionate than I am.
Mm,
And I have to have that accountability for myself as well. So I listen to contemporary Christian music. That's my thing. And some people say, oh, you listen to that because it's not a match. But I love contemporary Christian music and I listen to it all the time because I love praise and worship.
mm,
So it's always in my ear. That accountability, that faith is always in my ear.
yeah. What's something else? Like, I think so often as we're on this journey trying to discover who we are and the impact that we can have, it's a challenge being able to identify your superpower. What is Nia Mostacero's superpower?
I would say my superpower is that I'm a diverse person and I'm pretty eclectic and I'm open. I'm open to so many things because my God made everything. So why should I close myself off to this or that or something else? I'm very open and I make no judgments.
Mm.
I try to be understanding and I try to lead with that. Okay, so you're X, Y, and Z. Okay, tell me more about yourself so I can understand you. Or you do this for a living. What does that entail? I try to be that way, be that person.
Mm. Was you're trying to be that person and revealing that superpower. When you think about the world that we're living in, right, and the spaces that you navigate on a regular basis, what is a story that you feel still needs to be told?
That is a wonderful question, Angela.
Mm.
A story that needs to be told is probably the story of the Black woman
Yes.
because we carry the world on our shoulders. Um, it's something else to be told that you're less than, you're the bottom of the barrel, but yet you go to college and you get several degrees anyway.
Yeah.
You're told that you are not the standard of beauty, but you enter a beauty pageant, a Black woman in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
Um, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you dream? How dare you aspire to be great
Yeah.
when you're supposed to be in the shadows? So I think that our story needs to be told. It's funny. That's a wonderful question because I'm going to watch it again. I don't know if you watched that movie, Shirley.
Yes. Powerful.
It is powerful. Like, how
Yeah.
dare she dream to be president?
Yeah. To have that arrogance, like, right? She unequivocally, she was clear of her destiny.
Yes.
Right, and just the first day in Congress, and you see just how she's confronting the speaker about what committee she's going to be on, like just the power. It was so wonderful. Like as Nia mentioned, if you have not seen Shirley Chisholm on Netflix, make sure you catch it. It's a phenomenal movie, great acting, and a really important story for us all to see. Because think about this, like in 2024, like, think about what she was going through decades ago. It's remarkable the journey that she was on. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yes.
Well, when we think about Shirley, who was at her best quite often in many of those moments that were revealed during that movie, when you, Nia, are at your best, however you would define being at your best, what is true for you?
When I'm at my best, for me, I am my old self. I don't have dementia. I'm cognitively present. I'm mentally present. I'm physically present. I like to, when I work out every day, I go to the gym, and that is the one time of the day when I just feel like me, where I feel like I don't have dementia or any of my other health ailments. So that's what being present feels like. Is when I'm at the gym.
Mm, mm. So that's where you're able to center yourself is at the gym and with your granddaughter.
Yes.
Mm. Well, and how important is that? I can imagine the burden of waking up knowing that you have this disease has to be overwhelming. Has to be. We think about when you're in your 40s, like of all the things that you're looking ahead to be able to do. Like you work hard, so now you can retire, you can travel, you can do all these different things. How are you? Come on. How are you navigating this?
I have my good days and I have my not so good days. And
Mm,
that's an honest truth.
mm,
When I'm not having a good day, like I might have a little bit of brain fog and it's real that I have this going on, I
mhm,
rest. I simply rest.
mm,
But when I'm having my up days, it's wonderful. I happen to have a remarkable partner that we he's he's the best love affair that I could have ever had in my life, because we just talked about my progression and planning our future yesterday.
Mm.
And so he's like, all right, we're going to have to move to New England outside of Boston because they have the best memory care centers out there. So in 5 years, that's what we're going to do.
Mm.
Heaven, God keep you at the stage that you're at. That's what we're going to do. And he's looking up doctors in his area, because I'll probably end up relocating, neurologist and rheumatologist, because that's what I need, specialist in his area to make sure I get the best where he is.
Mm.
But just to be able to have those conversations with someone that's planning a future with you when you really don't know what your future looks like, that's
Yeah.
just that gives me butterflies, actually.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about grace a moment ago, and the advice that Huey gave you, that's grace. How can we show up for ourselves and advocate for ourselves, as Nia's talked about throughout this episode? But how can we also make sure that we give others grace, right? We see them, we hear them, we believe them, we value them, and we show up for them in their needs so they don't have to. It's really difficult, I think, for Black women to ask for help.
Absolutely.
And when someone can give you help, it's so powerful to be able to be in a relationship like that. So kudos to your man for being able to do that, and for you all envisioning what the future is like so that you can continue to thrive.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I can go on and ask a zillion questions, but I know you have a lot taking place. You have the pageant coming up. Would love for you to tell our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you on social media, and any special projects you have coming up where they can support you.
Great. Thank you for the plug. My Instagram is Miss Meridian Idaho 2024. You can find me there, and my profile is public, so you can also take a look. And my pageant is this coming Saturday, April 13th at 6 p.m. in Nampa, at the Northwest Nazarene University Brant Center. And I hope to see you there, Miss Angela. It's going to be a wonderful event, and I think that I'm going to be able to represent us. I think I'm going to represent us well.
I know you'll represent us well, as you have represented your family and other individuals and peers and colleagues who are going through a similar journey that you are. And just frankly, Black women who have so many things on our plates and aren't quite sure how to navigate them with grace and impact, and to be able to take on whatever blessings we're given and however we see those, and continue to have an impact. So I thank you for all that. I know you will show up very powerfully in the upcoming pageant. We wish you the best. We wish you well. And I so very much thank you for unlocking the club on healthcare, particularly for Black women, and specifically young onset dementia. Thank you for that. Wow. I wasn't sure where we would go with this episode. It was such a heavy topic. But one of the things that stands out to me is the grace that was on display in this conversation, and the grace with which Miss Nia Mostacero has to show up on a daily basis in order to show up so powerfully and to make sure that she can fulfill her dream of having an impact on others' lives. And she's doing so in light of the symptoms that she's experiencing on a regular basis, and the diagnosis and prognosis that she's confronted with on a regular basis as well. I am so grateful for Nia Mostacero for joining us here on Unlocking the Club. I hope you, our listeners, enjoyed this episode and get a little bit out of it about how important it is for you to take stock of what's happening for you in your body when you're not feeling right. Make sure that you go seek the guidance, the the assistance from physicians, to make sure that there isn't something that is severely wrong, something that the sooner you get on it, the better. Make sure you advocate for yourself when you are in those hospital rooms or doctor's offices, and really beyond. Advocate for yourself wherever you are. And then make sure that you give yourself and others grace along this journey. I thank Nia for those messages and that messaging. I thank you all for tuning in to Unlocking the Club. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe to Unlocking the Club on YouTube and whatever your podcast platform may be, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can be the first to hear our next Unlocking the Club episode. We thank you so much. And until next time, be well.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.